Everybody, my name is Crimson Cast, and I'm coming at you with another Leaguestart tier list. I'll be doing this every patch from here on out, as long as I'll play the game. If you're meeting me for the first time, I'm a speedrunner and speedrun commentator, and so I care a lot about the first 2 days of Leaguestart, and then you should hang out with somebody else. And we're here to bring you a Leaguestart tier list. A couple of ground rules about how I evaluate Leaguestart builds when we're trying to grade them for people is that I care a lot about things coming on early on in the campaign, so I'll be biased against builds that require, for example, level 13 skills that come online in the interludes, or builds that require specific uniques that you might not be able to get until you're in the trade economy in Act 4 and while mapping. So we care a lot about the gameplay style that comes on early on, and about things being budget. In my head, if something can't come online with a budget under 25 divines on the first 2 to 3 days of League economy, then it's not a very good League starter. The other thing is that a lot of people are going to be asking about Grim Pillars because it was so strong in 050, and now that we're in 055, without many balance changes, people may be thinking that that's a very strong League starter, and indeed it is. However, Kalgurin skills I'm disqualifying because you can no longer get them in the campaign, at least not deterministically. So as a consequence, that's more of a transition build in my mind, something that you play once you get to maps, and you need to level up from level 1 to, say, level 65 or 70 before you can transition to any of those Kalgurin skills you may be interested in, Grim Pillars being the chief example. So I'm disqualifying that. But it is a very strong mapping build, and if you like it, you should play it. First things first, we do have a very unusual tier list here. I have an S tier and a double S tier. Double S tier is a special tier that we're just saying is the best handful of builds, but they also meet the definition of they come online in the campaign and they're strong and scale well in the endgame at both low budget and into high budget. And the two examples of those are really simple. It's just super obvious. Twitch chat agrees with me. Hopefully you agree with me. Martial Artist Whirling Assault is one example. If you didn't play this on 050 Leaguestart, it's one of the strongest scaling builds that we've ever had. Holoform is extremely strong. The Glove Ascendancy Point is extremely strong. The bells can be used in a variety of interesting ways. Martial Artist Whirling Assault, one of the strongest builds that the game has ever seen. And then we're also just going to group twisters here generally. There are a bunch of different strong twister starters. Spirit Walker twisters with the Owl Feather empowerments can be extremely strong. Deadeye twisters with the projectile bonuses from that ascendancy can be extremely strong. Gemling twisters you can transition into after getting a couple of ascendancy points going. I would say that I probably would discourage a newer player or someone who's less confident from using Twister to level up on Witch, but Abyssal Lich Twister is extremely strong as a mapping build as well. So we're just going to say Twisters generally are in double S tier. Because there were no tuning changes to it, you can still get online very early with the Ordained on a pretty cheap budget. Once you're into maps, you can buy your Sky Sliver for your fast attack speed swap. It's easy to scale through multiple spirit skills. It's easy to get good companions that empower you early. So on budget gear, Twister does extremely strong. It just swept the ExileCon qualifiers, one of the strongest campaign builds we've ever seen, probably the strongest campaign build we've ever seen. And so Twisters generally, whether you're playing on a Deadeye or on a Spirit Walker or transitioning into Abyssal Lich later or playing Gemling at a higher budget, all of that's double S tier. If you're looking for a recommendation, I would say that I personally am very interested in playing Gemling Twisters in mapping, but not while leveling. So I would soft discourage that if you want to try Twisters. I would probably do it on either Deadeye or Spirit Walker. And just because of the quality of multiple Spirit Walker builds that are around, I would say Spirit Walker Twisters is my recommendation there in particular. So we'll go ahead and delete Twisters from a number of other places. Let's go ahead and put some other stuff into S tier, though. I Shot Deadeye, very strong build, was the Fub Gun build of last patch, so it was one of the more competitive things, but it remains extremely strong. Obviously, the economy is very much influenced by the decisions of major content creators, Fub Gun especially, but prices for this build should go down unless Fub Gun is starting it again, and so that means that you can rely on a very excellent guide with a number of well-resourced crafting steps out there, and then just play it now that it'll probably be cheaper if Fub isn't playing that, though we'll have to see what content he puts out. But it's at the very least an S tier build. Not quite as strong as Martial Artist Whirling Assault or Twister, and we'll have to see what the economic effect is of content creator decisions influencing the trade economy there. A couple of other really strong S tier builds. Plant Lich, sort of the Dead Rabbit style build in my mind, is another extremely strong build. I'll be clear here that I'm talking about Shot Deadeye. Plant Lich, also an S tier. Similarly, Plant Oracle, the Rax and Terex build, another really, really strong League starter there. Very simple to get online with Casty gear. There are a bunch of high-quality, well-written guides as well as video guides for Plant Lich and Plant Oracle, like I said, from Rax and from Dead Rabbit. So you can get a bunch of really good builds there. There are a couple of other things that I would say go in S tier as well. I'm strongly encouraged by Twitch chat to put Varashta Djinns Summoner here as well. So we'll go ahead and put that into S tier. Very strong, very survivable, easy to get online, comes online as early as your first or second ascend. So Act 2 or Act 3 scales really, really well here. And then the other one, of course, I'm going to call Companion Huntress. But to be clear, I am talking about the sort of Sylvan's Effigy, Zoo Master monkey build. So Companion Huntress, strong here as well. These are everything in S tier and above is stuff that you pretty strongly expect to get the Nerf Hammer at least passing over it in the head into 1.0. So if you started on Twisters last league and you want to play Martial Artists this time, or if you wanted to play Shot Deadeye but it was too expensive last patch, these are the things to play before they're gone, is S tier and higher. Now, to be clear, I've given like vague definitions of the tiers here. You can see the very best of builds, the online and campaign, strong and endgame tier. We're going to continue saying a few other things here as well. But just sort of keeping it to the core archetypes. A build being below S or double S tier doesn't mean that it's bad. In fact, player power relative to the content is relatively high right now in Path of Exile 2, so there are going to be a number of builds here that I may rank in A, B, or C tier that you may feel are quite strong. They are quite strong. It's a relative ranking, so don't be discouraged by other things here. Let's go through a couple of the sort of weaker builds. I'm going to give a soft discourage just to sort of give you an idea of the range here to playing Explosive Spear. Explosive Spear is a very visionary build, by which I mean it's, GGG's vision that you parry to disengage, to get a frenzy charge, to throw the Explosive Spear, to ignite it immediately, use Ignited Ground, to use Whirling Slash to clear the mobs, and that's a lot of moving parts. If you're willing to do that amount of setup, you could use other builds like Twisters, for example, that use a similar number of parts with Barrage and Ice-Tipped Arrows and Banner skills and so forth in order to get dramatically better clear and dramatically better single target at a much lower budget. So if you're a new player or you're looking to branch out, I wouldn't say that Explosive Spear is a great option here. Similar in the soft discourage build, if you're looking for an elemental spells, I'm going to say Stormweaver is the way to play Fireball, but it doesn't scale particularly well. Fireball should be playable, and it's been neglected by GGG for a number of patches here, so just to sort of set the lower bound of what a soft discourage is, that would be something that, like, if you're an experienced player, or if you're willing to do a little bit more trading and optimizing, and you want to have a more, thematic and engaging combat campaign, you can play these for sure. But they're not as easy to get online, and that'll sort of give you an example of what it means for a build to be between S tier and D tier. Let's give a couple of other things here. There are a variety of ways to play Essence Drain Contagion. I would say Essence Drain Contagion is a strong build, but because of the changes to Bonestorm, just to be clear, I'm referring to Essence Drain Contagion for clear, Bonestorm for bossing. It's definitely A tier. It's very workable. It's easy to get online. It doesn't scale nearly as well into endgame as things like plants do, because plants can be scaled up to a huge amount of clear. And Bonestorm struggled a little bit after changes to the way that critical hits were calculated for it in 050, but still one of the stronger builds, easy to get online, variety of good guides for it available. So definitely something that you can take a look at here. And then I would say Spell Totems, just while we're talking about it, Spell Totems, we're going to treat that as though it's specifically Druid. We're going to talk about Druid Spell Totems, so typically Oracle, I would say is B tier. The reason that I say it's B tier has nothing to do with its strength. It's extremely strong. Spark Totems via a build like Tatiantel's, for example, can be one of the fastest mapping builds. It's an extremely easy automated playstyle, but it doesn't come online until you get Spell Totem Gems, which is much, much later, something around the interludes, if memory serves. So as a consequence, Druid Spell Totems is in the strong, but requires investment or comes online late tier. And that's just because I want you to play something else for the first couple of zones in the game here. So definitely something to consider. Let's talk about Warrior while we're here. Warrior Shield Wall would be something that I would put into the S tier, especially for hardcore or SSF players in previous patches. It was extremely strong. With the Recombinator, you could get a tier 1 shield on day 1 in SSF with flat armor and percent armor, and therefore have like a 1200 armor shield pretty deterministically, 37% Recombinator chance for that particular one. So it was really, really easy to get good stuff going early. And now that the Recombinator is gone, as well as with the changes to Fortifying Cry, this has fallen from S tier, I would say probably to B tier. And yes, there are a number of like power charge, Nebulock based Infernalist shield wall builds, but that's an endgame unique. That's a higher level of investment. We're talking about your sort of classic Warbringer or Smith of Katava or Titan Warrior Ascendancy classic shield wall builds. And it's a strong build. It's definitely usable if you're playing it for the first time and you don't know what you're missing out on with 030 and 040 shield wall, then you're going to have like a perfectly good campaign. It's going to come online a little bit later, and it's definitely a build where investing a little bit more into mechanics like attack speed or area of effect through things like jewels can be particularly important, and that means that it's going to be a slightly higher budget because you're talking about crafted modifiers on jewels, and that sort of passes our like soft cap of 25 divine for it to jump up to where it meets in the end game. Same thing for, like I said, the Nebulock, Power Charge, Infernalist, crazy stuff. Those builds are extremely strong. They aren't starters. They're a slightly higher budget than we're willing to talk about today. Let's talk about a couple of other options here, just if you don't like the idea of Whirling Assault. Martial Artist Falling Thunder is another build I would put in S tier for sure. So we're just going to call that Martial Artist Falling Thunder. The reason that I say Martial Artist Falling Thunder in particular is because there's a good guide for this for leveling up. FG Corbin 21's Gigabonk Falling Thunder build, one of the stronger leveling builds. I personally feel that the AoE clear from Whirling Assault gets online earlier and with less investment, but it's another A tier option for you. Excuse me, S tier option for you. Other really good builds that we can put into sort of the middle tiers here, your sort of classic Fire, Lightning, Synergy, Spark, Firewall for clear, Ember Fusillade, Orb of Storms for bosses. On the Sorceress, I would say that that's probably a little bit weaker than Druid Spell Totems, especially in the endgame, and a little bit weaker than Shield Wall in terms of its defenses. It also has a lot of moving parts. I would say it definitely could fit into low B tier. I'm going to put it C tier simply because oops, hello? Thank you. Let me copy that. Whoops. So I'm going to put that into like the top of C tier. It's definitely usable. It's one of the stronger racing builds, but it just has so many moving parts right now that as a consequence, until you can scale up both cast speed and gem levels, it tends to be really, really difficult. So if you are playing on Leaguestart and you're unable to trade for a staff that has good gain or good spell damage, and then in particular cast speed and levels, your DPS is going to suffer. Once you're in endgame and you're above that 25 div budget and you can get a nicer crafted staff, you can get some cast speed or elemental damage jewels online, and you can start scaling through critical hits. This, of course, Spark is one of the builds that scales well into Spark, Cast on Crit Comet, or into a variety of other very strong like shock stacking endgame Spark Arc builds on Stormweaver. So it can be extremely strong, but as a starter to get through campaign, it's one of the weaker things, and it's very, very dependent on item RNG. Whereas, for example, on the very strongest builds, Martial Artist, Whirling Assault, or Twister, those can be played essentially regardless of your crafting luck during campaign. And then even these mid-tier builds like EDC Bonestorm or like Shield Wall, it's much easier to get things online earlier because, for example, EDC Bonestorm uses wands and focuses, and so as a consequence, it's a little bit easier to try and find a focus that has +1, and that sort of solves half your problem. I would definitely say if you're looking for a classic spellcaster experience, you're really hoping for some buffs to elemental spells for leveling in 1.0. Relatedly, Ice Mage, things like Cold Infusions for Frost Nova for your AoE clear, or Frost Darts in particular, similarly in C tier. Elemental spells generally could use a lot of love. Same sorts of arguments here. You have a lot of moving parts, infusion generation, and it tends to be something where if you're willing to do that amount of wind up, you could get stronger damage elsewhere. That said, there is some hope here. In 054, GGG ported over some support gems that used to be for attack builds only. Lightning Attunement, Fire Attunement, Cold Attunement, notably, made their way over to spells, and that allows you, in a lot of spellcaster builds, to get a little bit of damage earlier, which is keeping them from the sort of soft discouraged tier that Stormweaver Fireball is in. But the classic elemental builds are definitely struggling here. While we're talking about it, let's go ahead and grab Lightning Spear. Lightning Spear Huntress can be very, very strong in the endgame. There are a number of interesting opportunities for scaling it. Notably, for example, the Hidden Instill Storm's Rebuke, which allows broken armor to increase lightning and cold damage taken from hits as well. That can be an extremely strong endgame scaling for builds that have lower elemental conversion percentages and have chaining effects like Lightning Spear and Galvanic Shards, where breaking enemy armor is pretty easy because you have a fair amount of residual physical damage on the skill. So as a consequence, you can get armor break going easily, synergize with a nice hidden instill, scale to the moon, start charge stacking, all the usual stuff. These chaining lightning skills do really, really well in mapping. That said, Lightning Spear in particular struggles a little bit in campaign because spears are just generally hard to get online, and so as a consequence, you would probably want to level up on something else unless you're okay with a more methodical build. The other thing is that Lightning Spear relies a lot on frenzy charge generation to get full mob clear going, which means in early mapping, unless you have both a really good damage setup and the willingness to come up with some charge generation tech before you may have the spirit to get things like combat frenzy and charge regulation online, or before you have the ability, or if you're a psycho who wants to parry your way through mob clear in maps, Lightning Spear struggles a little bit. So I would say that, like, as a league starter, a lot of the spear-based builds other than Twisters struggle a little bit. I would say Lightning Spear, I would be happier to hear that someone is starting Lightning Spear than Spark Amber Fusillade, so I have to put it in low B tier as a consequence here. I think it's one of the things that scales really well in maps once you're at that 25 divine budget and you can afford a copy of the Ordained for 10 or 15 div and you can afford a couple of rings. Then you're really talking about what I would say is a transition build, and it stops being a really, really good league starter. So it's strong, but it requires investment or comes online late, hence B tier. Remember, this is all relative. You can definitely start there. For similar reasons and similar argument, Lightning Arrow is going to go into probably high B tier. I would rather hear that someone was going to start like a classic, old reliable Lightning Arrow, Lightning Rod build than Druid Spell Totems or Shield Wall. I don't think that the nerfs hit it as hard as they did Shield Wall in particular. That said, it's just easier to play Ice Shot. It gets online with cheaper gear. It's better supported in the current meta. And Freeze is inherently defensive, which solves a lot of early mapping problems while you're still gearing up and saving up currency to craft that nicer chest piece or to get the jewels online to really ramp your damage. So, Lightning Arrow with Herald stacking and on Deadeye, definitely strong, requires higher investment though, and in the end game it'll be one of the very strongest builds because Lightning Arrow, of course, can scale to extremely high clear speed with things like row amount, and with once you have the damage to equip support gems like Dominus's Grasp to get additional chaining, or you can scale your AoE and Herald stacking, you can get up to ridiculous amounts of clear speed on Lightning Arrow, of course, but there are things that come online earlier. Let's talk about another build here. Let's go up to Merc, sort of my hometown. I'll say that Merc Grenades as a league starter is a bit weird to rank. It's extremely good in campaign, extremely good in campaign. But then it falls off in mapping, especially in clear speed compared to some other things. I've league started Grenades multiple times now, 040, 050, scale to all content on low budgets, clear maps, do juiced abyssal stuff with modifier stacking, with delirium, with city maps with no problem. You can get ridiculous amounts of defense from Sorcery Ward. You can use Tactician Pin, which is inherently defensive. Reservation efficiency for spirit skills via the Tactician Ascendancy is also ridiculously strong, and as a consequence you can get very, very inherently defensive, but it doesn't scale as well to do full clear like the S tier builds. So I would say that like it's probably stronger than EDC Bonestorm, but I would place grenades in like A tier as a league starter. I would be much happier to hear that you're starting grenades than Shield Wall, Lightning Spear, Lightning Arrow. But if you were a new player, I would say that if you were deciding between Plant Lich, Companion Huntress, Varashta Djinn, and grenades, I would say that the S tier builds do gap the A tier builds. Similar arguments here for Galvanic Shards. Galvanic Shards is a stronger build for sure. And to be clear, I'm saying Galvanic Shards, but I also mean Galvanic Shards with Stormblast bolts for your single target. That doesn't come online until level 31, so when you're entering Act 3 or so in the campaign, it scales to be extremely fast. It's one of the best Sekima farmers builds before Temporalis builds come online. You can get huge amounts of chaining, you can get Herald stacking. It scales well through your typical south side of the tree scaling, so you can get a Constrict and Command scale through the surrounded nodes there. Obviously, Lightning applies shock, and like I said, with the Storm's Rebuke mechanics, you can get armor break and therefore charge generation. So Galvanic Shards Tactician is something that I'm looking into, stacking a bunch of buffs, charge regulation, scavenged plating, putting on a brass dome so I can get deflection from my armor. Probably a strong A tier build. I would say Galv Shard's actually probably stronger than grenades. It'll be a little bit worse in campaign and come online a little bit later, but it's so much stronger and scales so much into those endgame activities, like if you want to farm that revamped Trial of Chaos, or if you want to farm Sekimas, it can do really, really well. And then Stormblast Bolts ends up having truly absurd single target damage at relatively low investments. I was worried when I made my last tier list for 050 that Galvanic Shards was going to struggle with the nerfs to the lineage supports, Rotha's Assault and Arjun's Metal, but those nerfs were not as substantial as I thought they were, and there's so many interesting ways to scale Galvanic Shards with the new tools that we were given in 0.5 that I would I'm saying I was wrong to rank it so low in my tier list for the 050 Leaguestart. Let's go ahead and grab Permafrost Bolts. Permafrost Bolts, and I'm thinking of sort of the classic archetype where you have Permafrost Bolts and Fragmentation rounds. You're doing chaining in order to clear. That build can be extremely, extremely strong very, very early, and it does scale quite well. I would say that it's probably a build that is either low A tier or high B tier, according to my definitions here. Difficult to get online, doesn't have great scaling, strong but requires investments or come online late. Not really either one of those definitions. Permafrost Bolts Fragmentation rounds as a league starter struggles with a particular problem, and it's a build that I've played fully through the campaign 2 or 3 times. And that problem is this: if you freeze the boss with your Permafrost Bolts, and then you want to apply that huge on-hit frozen damage in order to get a kill, because Fragmentation rounds consumes freeze to do an enormous amount of damage. If you don't one-shot the boss in that single cycle, the boss will then have freeze resistance because they've just been frozen recently, and so then fights can get kind of awkward and kludgy if you don't get the one hit off. So as a consequence, in the sort of middle portion of the campaign, Acts 3 and 4, before you have crafting resources to get desecrations and essence crafting and chaos crafting and other modifiers online, if you lose out a little bit on item damage, then the sort of Papa Pokes style Permafrost Bolts Fragmentation rounds Mercenary is weaker than some of the other Mercenary options, especially early on in the league. I'm going to put it in low A tier. I could see an argument that it should be in B tier, but I would encourage you, if you really like that playstyle of the freeze boss and then do a huge windup, the direct comparison for that would be playing Ice Shot Deadeye instead of Permafrost Bolts Witch Hunter or Permafrost Bolts Tactician or Gemling. That said, there is another thing that's bolstering all these crossbow builds up into A tier, and that's that there are extremely strong leveling builds to get you to level 85, get some divines in your pocket, and then transition to essentially anything you want on Gemling. So as a consequence, you should be, if you're the sort of person who doesn't like replaying the campaign, I would say that playing any of these mercenary builds, because you can reascend from Tactician or Witch Hunter into Gemling, if you don't want to run the campaign twice, I would say playing Galvanic Shards to level up and then transitioning into the wide world of things that you can do in endgame Gemling is a very good default Leaguestart plan. Talk about a couple of other things. Warrior slams. Slams are fine. By slams, I mean things like a really, really classic Rolling Slam Bone Shatter build for the first couple of acts, transitioning into Leap Slam Bone Shatter, and then there are a variety of things that you can do for bosses, from Totems to Earthquake to Perfect Strike, or even just continuing to use basic Mace Strike to hit the boss. That's good. It's fine. Like a lot of melee builds, because you're in close proximity to enemies, until you can scale up to have reasonably high amounts of armor and block chance, it struggles a little bit defensively for players who aren't used to it. If you're an experienced player on melee, it's going to be one of the strongest campaigns that you can possibly have. I would say that like Slams Warrior, especially for sort of the same reason that you argue Gemling, Titan, because of hulking form, is one of the strongest endgame ascendancies. And so things like Slams Warrior get something of a boost from that. I don't really know where to put it. I don't feel particularly strongly. It's definitely A or B tier. Slams Warrior, I would say the definition that it's closer to meeting is strong but requires investment or comes online late. That said, it is a really easy Act 1 and 2. It then sort of like can have problems in early mapping if you don't have good craft and trade. So I'm going to put it in low A tier, because I think it's definitely closer to the power level of these crossbow builds. I would say I would encourage you to try it more than I would say Permafrost bolts, because there isn't the direct comparison to another slammy style thing. So as a consequence, Slams Warrior probably in the like mid to low A tier here. Couple of other things that we can get through quickly here. Physical crossbows are really cool. By that we mean the sort of like rapid shot, armor break, riven armor stuff. They tend to come online much later than the other crossbow builds. That said, there are a number of super interesting mechanics with riven armor and like poison stacking. If you're unfamiliar, riven armor is a mechanic accessible, I believe, through high velocity rounds, which is a physical crossbow skill that breaks enemy armor and then adds flat damage to subsequent hits. So if you have skills like Fragmentation rounds or like Rapid Shot that apply a large number of small hits, adding an irreducible amount of flat damage, not just irreducible, unscalable flat damage, the amplitude of subsequent hits can be extremely strong there. That said, it requires a little bit more mechanical knowledge to come online, but there is an excellent guide on this topic for a poison stacking riven armor build on Pathfinder, which is a phenomenal build from a guy named Reed Moorbook. And Reed Moorbook, that build is at the very least A tier, because it's just one of the best ways to play poison right now. It does ridiculous single target damage. That said, it'll struggle a little bit in campaign because it requires you to have a physical crossbow specifically. So as a consequence, in the early acts, if you get something that has big cold damage or big lightning damage, because your combination is dependent on specific synergies of prefixes, flat physical damage, percent physical damage, even in early mapping, it may be the case that your best available crossbow is not your best available physical crossbow, because you may find something with good elemental modifiers. So this is something that struggles a little bit more early on in the campaign. I'm going to put it in B tier for that reason, because it requires specific crafting investment. I would also say that just in general, its clear speed doesn't scale as well, like Druid Spell Totems and Lightning Arrow. But once the build is online, it's definitely as strong as builds can get, except for, of course, not having the clear speed of the very best builds here. So I would say while leveling, it's closer to B tier. That said, it's one of the more mechanically interesting builds. If you're the sort of person who likes learning about these mechanical interactions, I can't recommend enough going and watching that Read More Book build guide on high velocity rounds, Poison Pathfinder. So physical crossbows are going to be taken out there. We've already got slams here as well. Let me get rid of that. Poison Pathfinder. Poison Pathfinder is strong. Poison Pathfinder is fine. Guides from 030, 040, League starts, still fine, still works. Easy to get online. Not particularly interesting. I will say that it's a playstyle that a lot of people expect dots to feel much more satisfying, damage over time builds to feel much more satisfying than they do. I'd say that, Poison Pathfinder, though, if you want to League start it, there's nothing particularly bad about it. So, your Poison Pathfinder builds from before, there haven't been, super major nerfs to them. Poison Pathfinder is a strong League start. I will say that it's definitely in the correct ordering here of the main ranger archetypes. Lightning Arrow is worse than Poison Pathfinder, and Poison Pathfinder is worse than Ice Shot Deadeye, and Ice Shot Deadeye is worse than Twisters on any build. So if you're looking for a strong ranged build, this is the correct ordering of things to consider, unless you like the fantasy for one of them in particular. Let's talk about Glacial Lance. Glacial Lance is an interesting build, like a lot of martial weapons builds for spears. Glacial Lance struggles a little bit early on in the campaign, and then because of the attack speed scaling on one-handed weapon builds, it can be extremely strong, extremely strong in the end game. It can scale up super duper well, but that requires multiple moving parts, whether that's getting a particular unique Shrine Scepter that you want, like a Guiding Palm of the Eye, or a Hand of Chayula. So it's one of the strongest endgame builds, but your campaign here is going to be rough, because the single target damage from these builds in campaign and early mapping before you're able to get a very strong build online struggles. The other thing is Glacial Lance, unlike Lightning Spear, there isn't like an obvious budget unique option to get you online, whereas Lightning Spear has the Ordained. So if you like Glacial Lance and you like the idea of clearing super fast on Glacial Lance, it will get online late in maps. Don't get me wrong. It will be one of the strongest, fastest map clears, but your campaign and early mapping is going to be pretty bad. So as a consequence, I'm going to put Glacial Lance in C tier. Remember, this is all relative, so it's not that big of a deal, and it's also definitely stronger. I would prefer you play it rather than this. Like I said, it's usable if you like the playstyle. Both of these builds, once you get items online, Glacial Lance is going to be ridiculously fast, and obviously a Spark Stormweaver can scale to the moon, but you can also just level up on some other stronger build on the same archetype. You like Glacial Lance? You can level up on Twister. You like Spark Firewall? You can level up as a Varashta and then switch over to a Spark Cast on Crit Stormweaver in the endgame. So I would encourage you to not play these archetypes until you're above that 25 div level 85 threshold that we're using to define the tier list for today. All right, now we have a bunch of fun builds left. Let's do some quick hits here. Ice Strike Monk. Ice Strike Monk is C tier. It's usable if you like it. It's bottom of C tier. It's usable if you like it. It's so much worse than Whirling Assault. It's so much worse than Falling Thunder that although it is extremely strong, once you get that ascendancy online in the martial artist, just follow the other guides. It's fine. It can do well, but it's usable if you like the fantasy or playstyle, but it's definitely not something I would describe as strong. I wouldn't say that it's like limited by not having great scaling. I would say it's just limited, period. So Ice Strike Monk definitely down in C tier. And then we've got a bunch of things left over. Let's go for witch minions, by which I mean skeletal snipers with firewall, gas arrow, that sort of build. There are a bunch of different witch minions builds. That's the one that I'm most familiar with, as well as the one that I would recommend the most. I would say that that's a fine build. It's a core archetypal build, don't get me wrong. Like, the idea of having a necromancer summoner is something that's super important. And it does super well in campaign. It's an extremely comfy playstyle. I'm going to say it's at the very least A tier. That said, it's so clearly outclassed by the idea of like a Zoomaster companion huntress that if you wanted to be someone who just has a big summoned army, companion huntress is the clear option, especially for now because we're expecting it to get nerfs in the future. So I would say like low A tier is where I'm going to put like your classical minion snipers summoner. And now we get to Druid. And Druid is one of my favorite things. I really like the Shapeshift builds. I really like a bunch of different stuff about this. So let's start with like the ones that are super good. Wyvern. Wyvern scales extremely well. By Wyvern, I mean Wing Blast Rend for clear, and then Power Charge Generation into Oil Barrage for bosses as your way of leveling up. This is one of the stronger builds for getting through the campaign. It can be scaled super well because you can scale it on Shaman or on Oracle into Endgame. You can get Culling Strike mechanics online in order to be a blinking, Power Charge generating, Oil Barrage, Nova projectiles. Wyvern, we've seen builds like that in the past. So Wyvern, very, very strong. Gets online relatively early in the campaign. There's some problems with power charge generation. I would say that Wyvern is at the very least mid A tier, because it's so flexible and it has some of the other benefits that these other A tier builds do, because it's available on Oracle, and Oracle is one of the strongest and most flexible endgame ascendancies. Leveling up as a Wyvern and then wanting to play some more specialized and nuance with Oracle build that requires more niche items or more specific crafted modifiers, Wyvern is a very safe way to level a Druid. Similar argument goes here for Bear. Bear is definitely weaker than Wyvern in campaign. That said, it's inherently defensive. There are a couple of hidden benefits intrinsic to the Bear form, one of which is that you get 10 base armor per character level, which, for example, if you're level 80, that's 800 base armor. That's about as much as an extra helm or glove slot. It's about half as much as you'll have on a budget chest piece at the end of day one, if you're level 80 at that point. At the end of week one, if you're a casual. But in any case, that's a bunch of additional base armor. It's really, really tanky. It can be scaled really well. A lot of the mechanics that allow it to overcome its main limitation, which is just movement and clear speed, because it has low base attack time, is pretty difficult to get online now. Things like Mathel's Cocaine Bear with reverse chill and rage mechanics and charge regulation in order to get additional attack speed. Still viable, still really good, not as strong as it was in 030. So I would say that like Bear form, probably according to this definition, I would probably say it's the last build in A tier from what I'm seeing. Just looking at the ordering of builds here, do I think that like classic Bear Shapeshift is closer to the tier of builds in A tier or B tier? I'm gonna make the call that it goes here. We're gonna say just like Bear Druid in general here. I'm thinking in particular of a Bear Shaman Walking Calamity build in maps, and before that a sort of Slams Volcano hybrid build. The other nice thing is that the unique talisman for Bear Druid tends to be pretty affordable and tends to do pretty well, kind of like the Ordained does for Lightning Spear builds and for Twister builds. So that's a definite benefit to being able to get it online early. Compared to the other Shapeshift builds, though, Wolf struggles. Shout out to my boy Jazzerus, who's holding it down as the lone Wolf user, has done Wolf playthroughs on every single ascendancy. Wolf, I'll be honest, Wolf is C tier. It probably is a little bit better than Glacial Lance, although it doesn't scale as well. It's much easier to get online. It's probably not as good in my mind as playing something like Shield Wall, and it's not in the tier of a Bear Druid or Wyvern Druid. So Wolf Druid, definitely a playable league starter, can be scaled super well. Because Freeze, Herald Vice, Broken Armor chaining with Uruk's Smelting can be super duper fun playstyle. You can get those big crunchy Herald Vice pops for the full screen, but that requires you to get some AoE scaling online, and that requires you to get some added physical damage and gain as extra physical and other things. Uruk's Smelting is a lineage support that you may not be able to afford for the first couple of days. So Wolf Druid, definitely super fun, definitely can scale well. This is all relative. Every single build in this playlist, in this tier list, can clear all content, can scale on a budget, and a skillful player could use all of them. But compared to the other builds that are available, Wolf Druid definitely struggles a little bit more. And our last build on the thing is Wolfpack, by which we mean the sort of Pounce, Hunter's Mark, Wolf, Summoner. There are other ways to play companions that are better and easier than Wolfpack. Companion Huntress is one of them. Minion Snipers, Skeletal Snipers is one of them. I would say that Wolfpack, because it requires you to get a +2 minion helm and minion skill ranks in a variety of different places, and it requires a couple of those more specific rarer modifiers that may not be super cheap to get online without compromising your build on day one, are pretty difficult, because it's so specific to try and find a helm that has the prefixes that you want, the flat defenses, percent defenses, resistances, but then also has that very specific modifier +2 to level of all minion skills. Whereas even without that scaling vector, Companion Huntress and Minion Snipers can do much better. Just minion builds in general require a few more gem level things to get online. Wolfpack, though, I'm torn. I think Wolfpack as like a summoner build is pretty well supported in current meta. It's probably better early scaling. It's like low B tier. So like what I'm looking at is, do I think that it's low B tier or high C tier for Wolfpack? And to be clear, I'm talking about Druid Wolfpack. Obviously, like Companion Huntress includes Wolfpack in order to build up its number of things here, but Companion Huntress versus Druid Wolfpack is a very different thing. So right now I'm looking at like low B tier. I'll put it after Lightning Spear. I'll put it after Lightning Spear. Druid Wolfpack specifically. So do I, now that they're all done, do I disagree with any of the ordering of these skills? Let's do a full reading here. I'll turn off my face cam in case you're one of the people who's watching on YouTube and just wants the screenshot. Martial Artist, Whirling Assault, Twisters on Deadeye or Spirit Walker or Abyssal Lich in the endgame or Gemling in the endgame. Double S tier, definitely correct. S tier, does this include all the builds I think are S tier? Ice Shot Deadeye, Plant Lich, Plant Oracle, Varashta Djinns Summoner, Companion Huntress, Martial Artist, Falling Thunder. Then that's one thing. A tier. Galvanic Shards, Grenades, EDC Bonestorm, Wyvern Druid, Slams, Permafrost Bolts, Poison Pathfinder, Bear Druid, Sniper, Minions. I might demote Grenades to be a little bit lower. I think Grenades probably is closer to like Slams. Extremely strong campaign, doesn't scale map clear super well, is closer to where I think that is. Galv Shards, EDC Bonestorm, Wyvern Druid. Yeah. By the way, again, Galv Shards includes Stormblast bolts. What I mean is the Lightning Crossbow archetype. B tier. Lightning Arrow, Druid Spell Totems, Shield Wall, Physical Crossbows, including that great Read More book build. Lightning Spear, Druid Wolfpack. Correct. Wolf Druid, Glacial Lance, Spark, Firewall, Ember Fusillade, Ice Mage, Ice Strike. Yep. Explosive Spear, Stormweaver, Firewall. Yeah, so of all the main thematic builds, I'm pretty happy with this tier list as like representing my thoughts. If you guys are tired of the two main meta builds that are going to come out, which once again is going to be Martial Artist, Whirling Assault, and Twister on a variety of different ascendancies, I'm pretty convinced that I'm going to be playing Galvanic Shards, Armor Break, Storm's Rebuke, Tactician, but we're going to be testing that over the course of this week, and you can look forward to a build guide coming out from me 2 or 3 days before 055 launches. I hope that you guys all enjoy the Rite of the Nameless in campaign. And if you have any other questions, drop them in the comments below. We're also going to do an endgame builds tier list a couple of days after League start. So once you've hit that level 85, 25 divine budget, and you're looking for things to transition to, we're going to have more stuff, more content available for you there. This is just your leveling and early mapping builds. In Twitch chat, you can say goodbye, YouTube. You can say goodbye, YouTube. Bye, YouTube. Bye, YouTube.